Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy daily newspaper analysis. Today is 8th August 2024, Thursday, and today we have some important articles for the discussion. And without any further delay, let's start our discussion and we'll also understand all these important articles, because they are very important from exam point of view. One by one, we'll look into all those articles. And yesterday I have given one prelims practice question. So that is with respect to a case, a judgment of the Supreme Court in Prakash Singh versus Union of India case. The Supreme Court of India's judgment in Prakash Singh versus Union of India case is related to which of the following things? Option A, right against adverse effects of climate change. Option B, labor reforms. Option C, police reforms. And option D, right to education. Now, when we talk about the Prakash Singh versus Union of India case, this is one of the very important and landmark judgment that has recommended sweeping police reforms. So this particular judgment, the Supreme Court has stressed on professionalism within the police forces. So therefore, it has suggested there is a need for the police reforms within the organization. And if you look at the explanation of this particular question, so Supreme Court has given certain directives with respect to police reforms in Prakash Singh case of 2006. Right. So in this case, Supreme Court has actually given 7 directives to the state. Right. So we'll also look into all those 7 directives. What are the directives that the Supreme Court has given as part of the police reforms that the Supreme Court has suggested, right? So, a verdict with respect to fixing the tenure and selection of Director General of Police at state, so to avoid situations where officers about to retire in a few months are given the post, right? So, apart from that, the petitioner in this particular case also cited various authorities to prove its contention that there is a dire need for the police reforms in India. Of course, it is true. When we talk about police as an organization, it lacks professionalism, right? So it is very, very important that any organization need to work with professionalism. And in this context, Supreme Court has stressed on the need for police reforms in this organization. And in fact, the Supreme Court, in this particular case, the petitioner has also drawn references from various government agencies and even government reports itself, and also satisfied the bench that police irregularities within the organization of police are excavating the Indian administrative system. And it also further leads to the inefficiencies in the overall administration and governance. So you can also go through the 7 directives that the Supreme Court has given to the state with respect to the reform of the police organization. For example, the court asked the state to constitute a state security commission, and there should be a fixed tenure of DGP for 2 years. And apart from that, a 2-year term for superintendent of police and station house officers mandatorily, and separate investigation and L&O functions. So L&O functions and investigation needs to be separated, and there is a need to establish or set up police establishment unit and set up police complaints authorities at state and district levels. And even the Supreme Court has asked the state to set up National Security Commission at the central level. So these are 7 directives that the Supreme Court has given in this case. And today, a very important question, and this question is with respect to the government schemes, and it is also one of the government scheme that was recently launched in the year 2023. Vibrant Villages program is a scheme that aims to which of the following? That aims to achieve which of the following? Option A, sustainable placements for the rural poor youth. Option B, improve watershed management practices to help farmers become more resilient to climate change. Option C, develop urban clusters across rural areas in India. And option D, enhance infrastructure in villages along India's northern border. So try to answer this question, try to choose the correct option from this set of options and try to answer this question. And today we have some important articles for the discussion, and first important article is the increasing incidence of terrorism and militancy in Jammu and Kashmir in recent times. After the abrogation of Article 370, what happened was there were increased incidents of terrorism. So earlier, the government claimed that after abrogation of Article 370, the number of terrorist incidents or militant incidents have declined significantly, and normalcy has also prevailed in the valley. However, challenging this claim of the government in recent times, the number of incidents, especially the militant and terrorist attacks on people in the valley, have increased a lot. And we all knew that radicalization is one reason, radicalization within the valley is one reason, and second reason is cross-border terrorism that Pakistan has been sponsoring. Cross-border terrorism is also another very important reason. And apart from that, there are number of security lapses as well with respect to preventing the cross-border terrorism and at the same time taking a quick action against these terrorist elements or militant elements within the valley. Okay, so security lapses can also be another reason for the same. So however, in order to deal with the increasing incidence of terrorism in the valley, there is a need to create counter-terror grid. So this counter-terror grid essentially consisting of the security forces, and these security forces are divided into different units, and building capacity of these security forces so that they could effectively deal with the incidents of terrorism in the valley and normalcy can be brought back in the valley. So that is very, very important. Normalcy, peace is very, very important for the holistic and inclusive development of the Jammu and Kashmir, especially after the abrogation of Article 370. Because there are criticism on the part of Indian government also that deployment of security forces leading to the violation of human rights in the valley. Pakistan has been trying to internationalize this issue of Jammu and Kashmir and Indian security forces deployment, and therefore it is very, very important that we need to act strictly and we need to be more and more vigilant with respect to the terrorism and militancy in the Kashmir valley, right? This is a brief context, and apart from that, the weakened counter-terrorism grid that has been resulting from the troops from Jammu and Kashmir, so they are being redeployed in the line of actual control. We all knew that the line of actual control is the undemarcated border between India and China. So what happened was when Galwan incident was happened in the year 2020, where some of Indian soldiers were martyred, and after this Galwan incident, more and more soldiers who are part of the counter-terrorism grid were redeployed after this tensions between India and China. So that is one reason which has substantially increased number of terrorist incidents in recent times. So however, to tide over this challenge of increasing terrorist incidents or increasing militant attacks on people, additional troops, and these additional troops also including special forces teams, have also been inducted into the region to fill this particular void or fill this particular vacuum because of the redeployment of the forces to the Galwan Valley after the Galwan clashes with the Chinese soldiers. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand the definition of counter-terrorism. Now, what exactly constitutes counter-terrorism? What does it mean when we talk about counter-terrorism? In a simple term, so it is also known as anti-terrorism, and it in fact deals with, or it is an encompassing term, and it deals with the military tactics and practices and techniques and strategies that are being adopted by the armed forces, governments, law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies with the sole objective of combating or eliminating terrorism. And this is the brief definition of counter-terrorism. Now, whatever security forces and law enforcement agencies have been doing in the Kashmir Valley comes part of the, or it becomes part of the counter-terrorism efforts of the government. So however, in order to effectively deal with the terrorism, a counter-terrorism grid was established. The counter-terrorism grid was established to effectively deal with the terrorism and also preventing the terrorist attacks taking place in the Kashmir Valley. However, this counter-terrorism grid establishment is actually based on the threat perceptions, because there are a lot of threats that are being associated with the increasing presence of these militant and terrorist groups within the Jammu and Kashmir, right? So in fact, the Indian Army and security forces from different battalions are actually part of this counter-terrorism grid. And apart from that, this counter-terrorism grid is also based on certain factors such as the terrain of the area, because it is very important that when you look into the Jammu and Kashmir, the terrain is almost very difficult, and it also provides more and more opportunities for the terrorists to go for guerrilla warfare against the security forces. So therefore, it is very important that we need to have a detailed understanding about terrain in Jammu and Kashmir, and we need to identify the red spots or hot spots, which are also known as vulnerable areas, and even inclination of the local population. Now, how the local population's attitude is towards militancy and terrorism, whether they are supporting the Indian security forces, are still they are sympathetic with the radical elements, and this has to be understood, and the counter-terrorism grid actually deals with all these aspects. And in fact, within this counter-terrorism grid, there are different subunits, and these subunits are also deployed as part of the overall counter-terrorism grid. So therefore, the overall objective is to hunt down these terrorists and militant elements by undertaking strategical and tactical operations by the security forces, which are based on different aspects, including the physiological aspects such as people friendliness, understanding terrain, vulnerable areas, and even the hot spots of these militant activities, and even understanding the attitude of the people towards the security forces and also towards the militant elements. However, so when we talk about counter-terrorism as an element or as a strategy, it actually consisting of 4 essential pillars. Now, what are these 4 essential pillars which are part of counter-terrorism? The first pillar is prevent. That means to essentially stop people from becoming terrorists or even being sympathetic with the terrorist activities. Now, we all knew that in Jammu and Kashmir, there are people who directly or indirectly extend support for the radical terrorist elements. However, so one of the objective of the counter-terrorism grid that we need to stop people supporting the terrorist elements. And apart from that, it is also very important for the security forces and law enforcement agencies that they should stop terrorist attacks regularly taking place, these elements targeting the innocent civilians, because that would also disturb peace and create a fear environment in the entire Jammu and Kashmir Valley. And apart from that, it is also very important to protect or protect people, protect civilians against these terrorist attacks, because there's a fearful environment that exists in Jammu and Kashmir because of the frequent terrorist attacks. But as part of the counter-terrorism grid, so it is actually aimed to strengthen our protection against these terrorist attacks. And apart from that, the security forces, the law enforcement agencies, governments, everyone should be adequately prepared to minimize the impact of terrorist attack, to deal with the terrorist attack as quickly as possible, as swiftly as possible. However, so it is not free from the challenges. The security forces, in fact, have been facing number of challenges. For example, when we talk about the counter-terrorism, there are number of challenges which are associated with the counter-terrorism, because the local population in that particular area is divided into 3 subgroups. Now, one group supporting these radical elements, these militants, and the other group supporting the security forces, and the second group is against the militancy because it has been creating violence and it has been disturbing peace in the Kashmir Valley, and it also leads to a constant environment of fear. However, the third group of people are largely neutral. They are not supporting the terrorist militant elements, and also they are not supporting the security forces also. So therefore, it is a one challenge Terrain is also another challenge. State sponsored terrorism on the part of the Pakistan is also another challenge, and lesser deployment of troops in that unknown territory is next major challenge. And local people actively being sympathetic with the militants is also one of the challenge. However, Indian Army has been determined and it has been committed to combat or to counter terrorism and insurgency based on operations by infantry or Rashtriya Rifles unit. So that was deployed as part of the counter-terrorism grid. So however, the deployed counter-terrorism grid in the particular Jammu and Kashmir a region that actually supports the counter infiltration. So tactics, strategies, operations which are based on the counter infiltration, so that it prevents the infiltration of terrorists onto the Indian borders and deployment across the line of control. And it is also an undemarcated border between India and Pakistan, and also forming a multi-tiered arrangements, and all these things are part of the counter-terrorism strategy. And apart from that, newly inducted troops or newly deployed troops into the Kashmir Valley shall actually face a lot of challenges, because they have to settle down in that area. They have to deal with the local people who are living in that area, and they have to acquaint with the terrain in that area. And it is also new for them to deal with the terrorists, especially in Jammu and Kashmir, what sort of a tactics, what sort of a strategies that they're actually adopting. So therefore, it actually takes a lot of time for the newly deployed soldiers to actually adopt themselves to the existing conditions, and this further giving an opportunity for the radical militant elements to launch attacks on the civilians. However, it is very important that we must mitigate the existing challenges. When we mitigate the challenges, only then we can say that these counter-terrorism, counter-insurgency operations would be successful. The newly inducted troops or newly deployed troops into these, the Kashmir Valley, so they are being superimposed on already deployed units and subunits rather than being deployed in an independent manner. Now, when we deploy these newly inducted troops on an independent manner, they may not have proper awareness. Rather than, it would be better that if we add them existing units and subunits, so that over a period of time they could understand the tactics and strategies of these terrorist elements, and they also easily acquaint with the territory. Right? So in this context, it is very important that we need to understand an important operation called Operation Dudi. Okay, Dudi. So Operation Dudi, it was one of the operation that was done way back on May 1991 to successfully eliminate terrorist elements within the Jammu and Kashmir region. So it was done by Assam Rifles unit. So an Assam Rifles unit was deployed in the Kashmir Valley, and they also performed gallantly as an integral unit of the counter-terrorism operations. So they have conducted one counter-terrorism operation that is known as Operation Dudi in May 1991. In this, Chowki Bal, and it was done by 7 Assam Rifles battalions, is still remembered as one of the most successful counter militancy or counter terrorism operations that was successfully done. So you can see that in this particular operation, around 72 terrorists were killed. Right? So it is very, very important that we need to eliminate as many terrorists, as many militants as possible. Right? So that's one way that would create fear, and that would be like a deterrent, and that would also help restoring normalcy and peace in the Kashmir Valley. Right? So in fact, in this Operation Dudi, a huge catch of ammunition and weapons that included 70 AK-47 rifles were seized after this operation, and even 72 terrorists were also killed as part of this Operation Dudi. So therefore, we can say that there is a need for such tactical operations within the anti-terrorism grid. Anti-terrorism grid should actually understand the multi-dimensional nature of terrorism that has been emanating from the Jammu and Kashmir region. that has been supported and sponsored by Pakistan. So it is very important that we need to look into the multiple aspects that are resulting in increasing terrorist attacks in recent times in Kashmir Valley, and that will help the security forces to come up with effective strategies as part of this counter-terrorism grid, right? So the next topic is also very important topic, and previously also we have discussed about the BIMSTEC, that is a Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation. Right. So this organization was established to essentially enhance or strengthen cooperation between all South Asian countries and some Southeast Asian countries. So we all knew the fate of SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So because of the bilateral differences between different countries within the South Asia, SAARC became largely ineffective, or it is non-functional. So when SAARC became non-functional, India along with other like-minded countries have established BIMSTEC as an organization, and BIMSTEC is a 7-member organization excluding countries like Maldives, Afghanistan and Pakistan. However, in SAARC, countries like Maldives, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh are part of Sri Lanka are part of this grouping. However, in the BIMSTEC grouping, additionally Thailand and Myanmar are also members, but Pakistan, Afghanistan and Maldives are not member countries of the BIMSTEC organization. And in fact, BIMSTEC's overall objective is to further strengthen and further enhance cooperation among all South Asian and few Southeast Asian countries. Especially when we talk about cooperation, economic cooperation is a very important aspect, and connectivity is also another very important aspect, and security also the area of cooperation, because when we look into this area, so this is, this region is known for drug trafficking, human trafficking, organized crime networks, and even insurgency, militancy. So therefore, these are the areas where all these organizations sit together and they would discuss all these issues. However, the most important component of the BIMSTEC organization is trade or commerce. Now, in this context, recently a BIMSTEC FTA talks were started. BIMSTEC free trade agreement talks have actually started, or the leaders have been pointing out or stressing on the need to revive talks on the free trade agreement of BIMSTEC. So negotiations for the free trade agreement among 7 BIMSTEC grouping of Bay of Bengal littoral nations, so all the countries which are located in the Bay of Bengal are called as Bay of Bengal littoral nations, and including Nepal and Bhutan need to be expeditiously revived, and realistic possibilities like preferential trade agreements could be explored. And it is very important, imagine if free trade agreement is not possible, still member countries are having a lot of differences over the free trade agreement, and these differences leads to further delay in the implementation of free trade agreement or arriving at a comprehensive free trade agreement. So these member countries can even go for the lesser form of trade agreements, such as preferential trade agreements could be explored. So that is one way through which the economic ties would be further strengthened. Trade between all these BIMSTEC countries could be further strengthened at a rapid pace. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand briefly what is this BIMSTEC. We have understood the context and we need to understand the BIMSTEC. So BIMSTEC, as I have already told you, that this is Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, and it is a regional multilateral organization, and it comprises of most of the countries in the South Asian region and 2 countries which are part of the Southeast Asian region, which are littoral countries of the Bay of Bengal region. And BIMSTEC, remember, it consists of 7 member countries and 5 member countries are from South Asia. So these 5 member countries including India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and 2 member countries from the Southeast Southeast Asia, they include Myanmar and Thailand. Right. So when we talk about when it was established in the year 1997 through a declaration called Bangkok Declaration. So through Bangkok Declaration, this Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation was actually established. So you can also go through the importance of bimstec. What exactly is the importance of bimstec? Because it accounts for 22% of the world's population. It combined GDP is $2.7 trillion and 1/4 of the world traded goods across Bay of Bengal area. So therefore it is very, very important, the bimstec as an organization, and in fact it also has a lot of potential to substantially increase its trade and commerce and even connectivity also, and that would give a further fillip to India's ambitious and flagship Act East policy. Now, what are the basic objectives of bimstec as a grouping? Now, when we talk about bimstec, it is very important that all these countries are having a lot of differences. They need to overcome the differences. So in order to overcome their differences, it is very important that there is a need to create an enabling environment. However, bimstec would be an instrumental organization to create an enabling environment. And this enabling environment would ensure rapid economic development of the region and even strengthen or improve connectivity, improve infrastructure, improve people to people ties, and it would lead to the all-round development of the region, and that is very, very important. And apart from that, so when we talk about the bimstec as an organization, it is very important that all these countries sit together, they discuss different issues, they discuss challenges, and they also regularly collaborate on the issues of mutual concerns. They also assist with each other. For example, I would say that insurgency in Northeast is a concern for India. Right, so it is a challenge for India. However, most of these insurgent groups are getting safe havens in Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar. So therefore, as part of a multilateral organization such as bimstec, India would work with Bhutan, Bangladesh and Myanmar to overcome this challenge of Northeast insurgency. India could also get the assurances that they would no longer provide safe harbor to these insurgent groups. So that's how internal security in the northeastern region can be ensured. And apart from that, it would also play a very important role in support or accelerating the support for each other in the field of education, science, technology and different other areas also. So now, what is the significance of bimstec as an organization? It is established, so that's a very good thing that bimstec as an organization was established to overcome the whatever shortcomings that we have experienced during the SAARC regional grouping. So we should overcome those difficulties through the bimstec organization. Now, what is the significance and how establishing a bimstec organization would improve connectivity, would improve infrastructure, would better facilitate trade and commerce across these regions, right? So we need to talk about all those things, right? So when we talk about bimstec significance specifically for India, India has launched neighborhood first policy. So under this policy, India prioritizes its neighbors before engaging with any other country. So we can say that India gives primacy to its neighbors, right? So we have a lot of neighbors, and very often we can say that we are located in a complex neighborhood and we are also facing a number of challenges within India's neighborhood. So therefore, bimstec as an organization consisting of majority of India's immediate neighbors. So therefore, it provides a platform for India to engage with all its neighbors as part of its neighborhood first policy. And India also launched ambitious Act East policy because India wanted to connect itself with Southeast Asia and East Asia, and this Act East policy also aimed at improving infrastructure, improving connectivity in the northeastern part of India. So therefore, bimstec, both Thailand and Myanmar are member countries which are part of Southeast Asia. It substantially helps India to further strengthen India's Act East policy. right? So Act East policy would result in economic development of India's northeastern states by linking the northeastern part of India to the Bay of Bengal region via Bangladesh and Myanmar. So that is very, very important and very crucial here. And in fact, it also allows India to counter China's increasing influence in the India's neighborhood, especially in the Bay of Bengal region and in fact in the Indian Ocean region. And many of India's neighbors are already part of China's flagship project, that is Belt and Road initiatives. However, BIMSTEC is not free from the challenges. It has been facing number of challenges. For example, the one challenge is inconsistency in the meetings of BIMSTEC. In fact, BIMSTEC in recent times actually planned to hold summits every 2 years. So if you look at an organization, successful organization like ASEAN, so ASEAN regularly conduct meetings, regularly held meetings. So there is no such limitation that we need to meet once in a year with respect to ASEAN. But with respect to BIMSTEC grouping, the planned to hold summits every 2 years and ministerial meetings will be held every year. But only 4 summits have taken place in 20 years up to 2018. So you can imagine that despite the commitment of having summits once in 2 years, only few summits were held as of now. So the potential of BIMSTEC is not fully used by all these member countries. Apart from that, the BIMSTEC as a grouping, its focus is a very, very wide because it focuses on number of areas. Now, when it focuses on number of areas, obviously the emphasis of the BIMSTEC and all its members would dilute over a period of time, and that is the concern because BIMSTEC as a grouping now focuses on 12 areas as a priority areas of cooperation, so that including connectivity, public health, agriculture. However, so it is suggested that in order to make BIMSTEC more and more impactful and BIMSTEC would become a successful regional organization, it is very important that BIMSTEC should remain committed itself to deal with the few areas. BIMSTEC should prioritize few areas and start cooperating in those areas as effectively, efficiently as possible. And apart from that, there are a lot of bilateral issues also. And one issue is recently the regime change in Bangladesh and military regime in Myanmar. So that is also another challenge. And apart from that, the Rohingya refugees have been creating problems in the India's neighborhood, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Rohingya refugees are also entering into India's northeastern part of India. And according to estimates, around 40,000 Rohingyas have already migrated on the Indian side of the border. They are settled in different parts of India, mostly northeastern part of India. So all these things have been creating a lot of challenges for the success of BIMSTEC organization. Now in this context, what should be the way forward? So way forward is India is a dominant player in the BIMSTEC grouping. So since India is a dominant player, India could actually play the role of torch bearer in this grouping, right? So for the revived grouping to realize its trade, economic potential, India has to take a lead. India should play the leadership role, and India should actually address all the apprehensions of the BIMSTEC member countries. And India should play a leading role. Yes, it is true that India is a dominant player in the BIMSTEC among all these countries, but India should actually work on erasing all the apprehensions among the smaller member countries. And in fact, it is very important to facilitate cross-border connectivity. It is in India's interest because it improves connectivity and infrastructure in India's otherwise unconnected northeastern part of India, and it would also help India connect supply chains of it with the supply chains of Southeast Asia through Act East program. And apart from that, we need to prioritize connectivity and cooperation with all member countries to sign a free trade agreement is very, very important because that would benefit India. So India's vision to bolster trade connectivity in the grouping and free trade agreement are spanning the maritime resource rich members such as Myanmar, Sri Lanka. So they could actually bring dramatic gains for all members. And there are certain other focus areas also. For example, BIMSTEC should focus more on the areas such as blue economy, because most of these countries are littoral states except Bhutan and Nepal. So therefore there's a huge potential that they could focus on blue economy, and they could also focus on digital economy and promotion of exchanges links among startups and even micro, small and medium enterprises. So that would benefit all economies within the bimstec grouping. Right. So next important article is that India has been exploring ways to produce biobitumen to replace the fossil fuel based bitumen that is used for the construction of roads. And if you look at the highways, and the black component in the highways is actually the bitumen, and bitumen is a component of fossil fuel. When fossil fuel are extracted, when crude oil is processed, a thick and denser substance within this crude oil is known as bitumen, and this bitumen is further used in the construction of roads. However, bitumen, most of the bitumen that we use in our roads is like imported. Right. So therefore the government of India has been exploring alternatives to produce biobitumen. What does biobitumen actually means? That this is also a source of bitumen, but that is produced from the sustainable sources, for example algae, plants, plant residues. So it is a biobitumen and it is not from the fossil fuels, and this will be used for the road construction, and it will be more and more sustainable also. Okay, so there are also plans to lay plastic roads, because we have a lot of plastic. However, every day the world has been generating thousands of tons of plastic, and plastic waste has also been increasing a lot, and we do not have adequate capacities to recycle and reuse this plastic. Right. So and alternatives are also being explored to lay the plastic roads, so that the plastic can be used in this manner. Right. What is the context? The context is that Union Road Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari ji, so he recently mentioned that government will actually allow mixing of lignin up to 35% in petroleum based bitumen. Lignin is also known as biobitumen, and lignin will be mixed up with the petroleum based or crude oil based bitumen. So around 35% of this lignin will be mixed. So then that will be used for the road construction, as large part of it is imported from the other countries. Bitumen. Now what exactly is this biobitumen? We need to understand this. So it is actually a bio based binder, and that has been derived from the biological sources or renewable sources such as vegetable oils, crop stubble, algae, lignin. So lignin is a component of wood again, and even animal manure. So you can see clearly that it is the biological source and even renewable source. And when we talk about the bitumen, the natural bitumen or crude oil based bitumen, which is a fossil fuel. So bitumen is primarily derived from the distillation of crude oil. Now crude oil is imported, India imports crude oil, and then crude oil will be processed, and there will be a process called distillation. Crude oil distillation would be done. So in this distillation, so different products, petroleum, diesel, kerosene, and even this bitumen would be separated. So during this refining process, heavier bitumen, which has a higher density, so remains after lighter components like gasoline, diesel are being removed. So once they are being removed, so this high density bitumen would remain under this. Right. So apart from that, it can also naturally occur in deposits such as oil sands also. And in fact, this bitumen in India is heavily used for the construction of roads and roofs as well. And in fact, it is also used as a direct replacement, modifier, and even rejuvenator also. However, the straw will be used in making roads with the biobitumen technology, with that could further reduces pollution also. Right. So India's biobitumen initiative, we need to understand about this. So when we talk about India's biobitumen initiative, so India has been actively exploring large scale production of biobitumen. We already understood how this biobitumen is being produced. So this is produced from either biomass, So that is sustainable and renewable source, or even agriculture waste also. And in fact, this biobitumen use, or replacing the existing natural bitumen with the biobitumen, actually aims to reduce country's significant dependence on imported bitumen, because majority of the bitumen that we use for the construction of roads is being imported. So we need to import, and it costs a lot for us, and therefore we need to look for a sustainable solution, a sustainable alternative for this, and that can be commonly used for asphalting, while also addressing the persistent issue of stubble burning. When we use biomass or agricultural waste as a replacement of this bitumen, we could address the stubble burning problem. So it is persisting, and it has also one of the major source of pollution in the NCT region, Delhi NCT region. However, India as of now currently imports about half of its annual bitumen requirement, right? So India has been importing around half of its bitumen requirement, and this goal is to replace these imports with biobitumen over the next decade. So therefore it will be a sustainable source of bitumen for India. However, it is not free from the challenges. There are a number of challenges that India could face, right? So when we talk about the challenges, cost effectiveness, because currently, so if we wanted to produce biobitumen, it costs more. It is lot expensive than the traditional bitumen. And we should also have a proper study about the long-term effectiveness or long-term performance of the biobitumen, like the present bitumen that we are using in the road construction. And apart from that, standardization is also very, very important. So therefore we need to establish clear standards and specifications for the biobitumen, and is necessary for its wider adoption in the road construction industry in the longer periods of time, because it is not a short-term plan, it is a long-term plan. In the longer term, we wanted to shift ourselves to an alternatives like biobitumen. And today we have a very, very important practice question. So that is with respect to the cooperative societies in India. So we all knew that in Gender Studies paper 3, paper 2, especially paper 2 governance, so cooperative societies as a topic is given in the syllabus. So therefore we'll try to discuss this governance part, right? So when we talk about this question, the question is examine the factors which are contributing to the suboptimal performance of cooperative societies or cooperatives in India, and also analyze or also write some government initiatives which are launched to address the challenges that the cooperatives in India have been facing. So this is the question. And when we talk about the approach, again a very simple approach. The approach is, first you need to give a brief account of cooperative societies. Now what are these cooperatives? You can define these cooperative societies, and you can also briefly write the significance of these cooperatives. And apart from that, you could also discuss factors which are contributing to the suboptimal performance of the cooperatives. And this is because this is the first part of the question. And then you need to write some initiatives that have been launched by the government to deal with the challenges that the cooperatives have been facing, and then write a way forward. And that's how you could actually structure your answer. So as I have already told you, you have to briefly define cooperatives, and you should give a brief introduction about the cooperatives. So a cooperative society is a voluntary association of persons, so who actually join together with the motive of welfare of its members. So they come together, they join together, their prime objective is welfare of the members. And in fact, they are primarily driven by the need for protecting their economic interest. They wanted to protect their economic interest, especially in the face of exploitation that they are suffering in the hands of middlemen and commission agents, with a desire to earn greater profits. However, when farmers unions form a cooperatives, and that substantially increases their bargaining power, and it also increases their income, and it improves livelihood, it provides income security for the farmers. And in fact, the cooperative society is compulsorily required to be registered under an act in India, that is Cooperative Societies Act of 1912. This Cooperative Societies Act of 1912 mandates that every cooperative society that is established in India should mandatorily be registered with the government under this act. Now, what are the major features of cooperative societies? We'll try to understand the basic and major features of the cooperative societies. So it has certain features, for example, voluntary formation and open participation in the cooperative societies. Now, irrespective of race, caste, sex, place of birth, financial status, income, everyone can be part of these cooperatives. There is no such distinction or discrimination. And apart from that, so it results in democratic member control and members' economic participation. All members would come together, they join together, they part of the cooperatives, and they also concerns for the welfare development of the entire community. And in fact, the education, information and training can also be disseminated across all members within the cooperatives. It substantially increases their bargaining power, and even it results in certain autonomy and independent functioning also. Right, so this is briefly about the cooperative societies and what are their major features, characteristics. However, cooperative societies in India have been facing certain challenges, and these challenges have resulted in the suboptimal performance of the cooperative societies. However, cooperative societies are very important, right? Because these cooperative societies very often think about the entire community, development, welfare of the entire community. It plays an instrumental role in alleviating poverty. It increases the bargaining power of the members of the cooperatives, and it improves incomes, livelihoods and income security also. So that's why it is very important that these cooperative societies should work in an efficient and effective manner. However, in India, the problem is that the cooperative societies actually lacks the spontaneity, in the sense that it has not been emanated from the people themselves. Now, there is no demand, a large scale demand from the people that we need to form cooperatives. We need to come together, we need to join cooperatives, we need to strengthen our welfare developmental efforts. There is not like that. There is no demand from the people, and that is a key challenge for the poor performance of the cooperatives even after they are established. And apart from that, there is also inability on the part of the existing membership or active membership to come together, work together, and even the speedy exit of non-user members and lack of communication within the community members of the cooperatives. And there are also lack of sustained awareness generation measures as well. And in fact, so governance of these cooperatives is very, very important. But the problem is there are serious inadequacies in the governance, within the governance. So that includes related to board's roles and the responsibilities. Who will lead these cooperatives? What are their roles? What are their responsibilities? There is no clarity, and there is also a lot of confusion existing, and all these things making the members of the cooperative societies too reluctant to be part of this. And apart from that, there is also lack of competitiveness among these cooperatives, and they are also facing number of issues with respect to overstaffing. It's all they lack technology. They have no awareness about the government initiatives, and there's poor communication, there is overstaffing, and all these factors further leading to the competitiveness or lack of competitiveness due to the entry of MNCs into the Indian markets. And the another major problem that the cooperative societies in India have been facing, which leads to the suboptimal functioning of them, is politicization or political interference, excessive interference of the politicians, excessive interference of the government. And that is arising due to the existing loopholes and restrictive provisions of the Cooperatives Act of 1912. And in fact, the vital link in the cooperative societies or cooperative system, cooperative finance system in India, is establishment of cooperative banks. But these cooperative banks themselves performing in a very poor manner, and they are also very small. they lack adequate capital, they lack the ability to give loans to the members of the cooperatives, and these cooperative societies also facing the problem of non-performing assets, because the people who have taken loans from these cooperatives, due to the poor coordination, collaboration among all the members within the cooperatives, the cooperative financial system has also been facing the problem of non-performing assets. However, recently the government has come up with certain measures to revive these cooperative societies. Particularly, the National Cooperative Union of India was established. So this National Cooperative Union of India would represent the entire cooperative sector across the country. And secondly, NAFED, that is the National Agricultural Cooperative Marketing Federation. It was also established. The objective of NAFED is to assist marketing cooperatives in the states and even improve services to the members. And the government has also launched the National Cooperative Development Corporation as well. And it was formulated to plan and promote agricultural produce and even commodities through the cooperative societies. However, there is a 97th Constitutional Amendment Act, right? A 97th Constitutional Amendment Act. So it was amended Article 19 Clause 1 and Subclause C. So to provide protection to the cooperatives, and in fact it also inserted 43 Constitutional Amendment Act, 43B, that is Directive Principles of State Policy, 43B and Part 9B, so that are with respect to the cooperative management. And in fact the Supreme Court's partial annulment notwithstanding, multi-state cooperatives still fall under its purview, and the central government has also launched a Ministry of Cooperative Societies, or Cooperative Ministry was also established by the central government. However, it is very important that since the multidimensional benefits and advantages of these cooperative societies, it is very important that these cooperative societies should be revived. The voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control, professional management of these cooperative societies should be maintained, and it is very important, particularly for the marginalized sections. So that's how you can conclude this answer, and that's all in this lecture finally, and thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.